What's the current scoop with Aaron Rodgers? Do we know where he is? Lights on, lights out, decision, all that business? What do you got for me?
I think at this point, the next thing that I'm going to confidently speak on is when Aaron Rodgers tells the Packers what the hell he wants to do. Honestly, everything up until then is very much on Aaron's own schedule. He's made clear that there are very few people who really know exactly what he's doing at any given moment. What I would say is that despite, whatever reports are coming out on a daily basis and speculation, the first move here belongs to Aaron Rodgers. The Packers cannot trade him if he doesn't want to be traded. He would need to sign a revised contract to allow Green Bay to facilitate a trade. He also could simply say, I'm not going. If they try to trade him to someplace he doesn't want to go, I'll retire. I'm not showing up. So they would have to work through that together. If he wants to return to Green Bay, the Packers, and as long as he's fully bought in, the Packers want him back. They had good conversations after the season. He is still, down the stretch last season, he played at a high level. He kept them in it. Obviously, Week 18 didn't go the way they wanted it to. But there would also need to be further conversations about making sure that everybody's on the same page about the direction that the roster and the organization is going. And all that is without him actually telling anybody, including people he knows with other teams, that he's definitely going to play in 2023. So he's going through his process. I do anticipate we're going to have answers sooner than later. Right now, as we sit, and certainly as of last night, those answers did not yet exist. This is up to Aaron. Gives you $60 million fully guaranteed. Whatever happens from here, the Packers and Rodgers are going to work through it together.
Well, and I'm sure you know the name Bob McGinn, and you know what that's going to lead to my next question. Bob McGinn, having covered the Packers since Don Majkowski was the quarterback and Lindy Infante was the coach, he kind of knows what's going on in the Green Bay front office, despite having been retired on a day-to-day basis for the last couple of years. He says the Packers are, quote unquote, disgusted with Rodgers and are done with him. What do you make of that report, Tom?
I certainly know Bob. I would say nobody has told me that they are disgusted with Aaron Rodgers. I think that it is natural when you give someone a unprecedented type of contract, basically ripping up the remaining contract and giving them what amounts to a 3-year, $150 million plus deal like they did last year. You're anticipating you're going to get somebody who's fully bought in and is going to play at a really high level. And it didn't work out that way. In 2022, he had the finger injury that probably impacted him more than people realized at the time. He had some other injuries that he played through. Did, as I said, played better down the stretch as things got going. But then you go right back into the will he or won't he and, keeping the franchise waiting. I think it's natural for people to be frustrated by that. Listen, to win in the NFL, your best players, your highest paid players have to play at a really high level. That was not the case on the whole for Aaron Rodgers with the Packers last year. But again, I would just go back to all I can speak for is what I know, which is that if Rodgers wants to play for the Packers, and if he is bought into the way that they want to proceed here, then the Packers want him back. And they would expect that he's going to come back and play really well in 2023.
So then let's
make up his mind first.
So let's say he doesn't want to play for the Packers anymore, and he wants to be traded. What does the market look like? We're all assuming Nathaniel Hackett is the new offensive coordinator for the Jets, who just had a meeting with Derek Carr, and they'd be interested. And we're assuming Devontae Adams is in Vegas, but we're assuming the Raiders would be interested in him, despite Josh McDaniels having his set way of doing things, being his track record. What's the market for Rodgers outside of Green Bay, Tom?
I would anticipate you're going to have several teams involved at least. The challenging part of actually pegging what the trade price is and ultimately the market is, you're getting a player who not only is due $60 million this year, but that you're now going to take over the year-to-year Aaron Rodgers watch. In other words, how much do you give up for a player who potentially is only going to be there for one season? You go back to a year ago, and when the Broncos were evaluating their options, they paid more in terms of draft picks for Russell Wilson than they would have expected to pay for Aaron Rodgers. Just because with Russell Wilson, and of course, hindsight's 20/20, and you can go back to the trade, the contract, and everything else and evaluate it. But they evaluated this as Russell Wilson's going to be the quarterback here for 3, 5, 7 years. With Rodgers, it would be a one-off. So, what exactly do the Packers get? I would guarantee you that they've done some research historically on players who at that stage in their career were traded. They have a pretty good track record themselves, specifically trading a quarterback at the end to the Jets. With Favre, it was not a big price in that trade. And he ultimately spent 1 year there, retired a second time, unretired a second time, went to Minnesota and beat the Packers twice in 2009. Different spot right now with Aaron Rodgers, but some of the similar dynamics here. And then the money is a factor. Not everybody's going to want to pay that type of money and pay out draft picks for a 1-year rental. But there are spots like you mentioned the Jets. They seem to have everything else in place. They've got a really good young roster. They seem like they're set up well, but they don't have a quarterback. That may be a team that's willing to go all in on this. Teams like Tennessee, they run a variation of a similar offense. Could they potentially get involved? You mentioned the Raiders. I think that the natural connections with them are probably more so guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, who have run that system Josh McDaniels is going to want to, but you can't cross them off. I mean, half the league right now, Rich, doesn't have a firm quarterback plan. If you look around the league, how many teams right now can you confidently say we know who their starting quarterback is? All of which is to say, if Rodgers decides he wants to play and does not want to play in Green Bay or does not want to play under whatever circumstances are laid out for how the Packers are going to proceed here, then he's going to become available and the Packers are going to have a market for him. But also the other dynamic here is because he basically has veto power over any destination because of both the contract and the retirement threat, he can narrow it down to more or less one team and say, I'm only going there. And then you lack the, let's say the type of leverage that the Texans have with Deshaun Watson, where you could pin a price, say everybody's got to meet it, and then let 4 teams all try to beat each other out for the guy.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.